right, ladies. Well, I am so excited to be just back in conversation with the both of you because everyone in this room knows that this is not simply a conversation about education. It's a conversation about the future of work, leadership, and opportunity. And we all know the headlines. 75% of third graders say they love school. By the time they get to the 10th grade, that number drops to 25%. Employers tell us that young people aren't prepared for the workforce, and colleges are struggling with persistence. So this conversation is going to be about a reframe. What if disengagement isn't just inevitable, but there's an opportunity to rethink how we ready our students for the future? So you talked to hundreds of students.
We surveyed 65,000 of them with Transcend.
Exactly. So Rebecca, tell us a little bit more about what you learned, because I know disengagement isn't one size fits all. When students disengage, they tend to fall into 4 modes: resistor, passenger, achiever, and explorer. Talk to us a little bit about those modes.
So in our research, we found that kids really dig in, and we talk about engagement as motivation is internal, and engagement is what you do with that motivation. Yeah. I'm very motivated to go to the gym and work out. I do not want osteoporosis. My son is really worried about that, but I've not signed up for a gym. So I'm motivated, but not engaged. So we want kids to be engaged.
Yes.
And we found that they engage in these 4 different modes. The passenger mode is the most common in middle school and high school. Approximately half the kids say they have experiences in passenger mode. That's when they're coasting.
Yeah.
The achiever mode is when kids are really trying to get a gold star in everything that's put in front of them. They're pretty focused on the outcome, not the process. Resistor mode is when kids are avoiding and disrupting their learning. And explorer mode is where we want a lot of kids to spend time. It's where kids really love learning, where curiosity meets drive. They can really become unstoppable. We found that less than 4% of kids say they regularly spend time in explorer mode in middle school and high school. I will tell you one story because it's important. These modes are not identities. They're not labels. Kids move between them based on their environment.
Yeah.
So one of the characters that we have in the book is a young man named Mateo. He came to the US from the Dominican Republic. In 2nd grade, he was all into being a great student. It's what his family wanted. He was highly motivated and highly engaged, got straight A's, was full-on achiever mode.
Yeah.
Got to middle school, and it was pretty easy for him. He was pretty academically talented, and he had a math class where middle school math teacher said, hey, kids who want to do extra work can go on this app at home, and you get unlimited extra credit points for every math question you answer on the app at home. What did he do? Yeah, he literally sat there, calculated, didn't do a stitch of homework, not the entire year, did all extracurricular, did all the extra credit, thank you, and got an A in the class. And that was sort of a downward slide for him. He started getting really into passenger mode, was just sort of coasting, finding it the easiest way to do it. And then he just was so bored that he started looking for excitement. Yeah. So this is where kids are dubbed the problem children. He became class clown. He kept interrupting, and then he stopped doing his homework, and then he started skipping class, and then after a while, he was skipping a lot of school. He skipped a lot of school. And then in 8th grade, he took a robotics elective, and it was the first time he said, I couldn't just hack the class because I was trying to figure out the answer. Yeah. He got super excited, got super into it. There was a lot of experiential learning. He wasn't given the answer. He was exploring, got super motivated, went on to a big picture learning school. Fast forward, he got a full, massive Amazon Future Engineer Scholarship and is off in college for computer science. So engagement moves around. I love that. Yeah. Based on what we provide our kids.
And so, Jenny, achiever mode, right? So I'm a former teacher, and I loved my babies and still do, but that's what we've traditionally rewarded, right? You're meeting expectations, you are meeting the deadlines, you are achieving that gold star, and your work is telling us that we need to push back on that. Tell me a little bit more about why we have to push back on achiever mode.
Yeah, we all love achiever mode, right? I
Yes.
mean, parents love achiever mode. We feel like we're doing it all right. The whole world loves us. Teachers love it because they're telling us we're doing it all right. But there are a couple problems with achiever mode. What we found in our research is that these are kids who are striving for perfection, not excellence, and there's a cost to that. It is at all costs, and these kids have the highest rates of mental health problems of all the kids, more than resistor mode, more than the kids who are dubbed the problem children in the system. These are the kids who are really showing up with a lot of problems. So that's problem one. Problem two is that if you are always trying to get the right answer, you are not leaving a lot of room to be a creative problem-solving thinker. And I think in an age of AI, I mean, we're hearing quite a bit about AI here and what AI can do, which is, you know, just about everything. We need kids who can think for themselves. What do I care about? What do I want? What can I do? And what do I actually care about, right? That internal introspection is not something achiever mode kids are particularly good at because they are so busy serving a system that is insatiable. They are trying to jump through every hoop, and there is no hoop now. You know, there's no end to the hoops you can jump through. So achiever mode is, obviously, we want the organization skills, we want the work ethic, we want the discipline. That's happy achiever mode. But when we tilt into this unhappy achiever mode, this striving for perfection, there's a cost to it. And I think we have to just be really careful about that. And the explorer mode is what's going to help us in this age of AI.
You know, when we started preparing for this conversation, like we sat here for a moment, and I told you a little bit about what my dad taught me when I was growing up. So he said, you know, struggling makes you strong, but never let anyone see you struggle. And so that has shaped how I showed up, you know, as a young adult, as a teacher, as a leader. And it taught me resilience, but it also taught me to navigate the world instead of truly changing the world, right, and influencing the world. And so when I think about these four modes, the question that keeps coming back to mind is like, how do we ensure that we are preparing our students, no matter what their identity is, to change the world? How do the four modes really play into that?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that we have is that the school system is not designed right now to help unlock the potential in every child. The system is designed still to sort and rank, and it's designed on a very narrow set of measures. And so when we talk about getting into explorer mode, you need multiple access points to get into that explorer mode, so we need to be designing for that explorer mode. You know, when you ask, there's a big conversations happening right now about smartphones. Maybe you've noticed The Anxious Generation, very big book, you know, and the argument there is that we have overprotected kids in the real world and underprotected them online. Could not agree more. Here, really happy, and here for a lot of the regulate big tech, let's you know, step up and get some controls here. But when you ask young people what stresses them out and what's making them unhappy, they do not say their smartphones, and it is not because they don't know. They say school. The thing that is making them most unhappy is having to succeed in a system that does not have meaning for them. And so we need kids, that last panel, the core principle, the core operating foundational principle is you have to want to do it, right? Once we get that unlocked, we can do a lot. And so we need to get to the why and get this unlocked in kids. And that is not, and this isn't the fault of teachers. We're very clear in our book. This is not the fault of teachers. They are stuck between a lot of accountability at the top and a lot of pressure from parents at the bottom who want, this is the system they have and they want their kids to succeed. So we really need to find more access points to let more kids succeed. And we do not mean by lowering expectations here at all. What we mean is more access points to explore moments.
I want to stay here just for a moment because we hear this all the time. It's the system. The system needs to change, but we know it takes time for systems to change. So, Rebecca, when you think about moving from what you all call this age of achievement to the age of agency, what should systems be doing to actually drive towards that goal?
So our big picture argument in the book is exactly what you said, Tiffany, for everybody who hasn't read it, is that our current education system is really stuck in the age of achievement, which is about ranking and sorting. And every school system, by the way, is like this around the world. So there's a long historical legacy as to why. But where we need to go, especially given an age of AI and this question on the last panel, in terms of I don't know what I'm preparing my young people for. What we need to prepare young people to be able to do is to have agency. That is what they need, and that is what Explorer Mode is. And the ways to do it, there's a whole continuum from really systems need to work with families. This is not something a teacher in a classroom all by his or herself can solve on his or her own. Schools have to reach out to families because Explore Mode is built at home and in school, and you need families and parents and caregivers to be reinforcing what schools are doing. They need to partner up on that. So, training families about engagement and what they can do to help motivate and engage their kids at home, which is a lot. Another thing that we can do is really doubling down on autonomy supportive teaching in the classroom, regardless of who the school leader is, regardless of what your district policies are. Teachers actually can do a lot. Maybe we'll come back to that. A third thing we can really do is try to shift policies that we can do right away, which is around extracurriculars and giving more kids opportunity to go outside the school walls and touch, smell, and feel what they're learning hands-on, et cetera, career-connected learning, all types of school policies. Just short of, probably the real thing we need to do, which takes time, so you can do all these pieces, the real thing we need to do is full-scale school redesign.
So, I want to stay here, but I want to connect to a point that, it made me laugh when we talked about it. When we had our first conversation, Jenny, you said your husband pushed you after he read the book. He loved it, for sure.
He had a lot of comments.
Had a lot of comments, but loved it. But
we took a lot of them, by the way.
Oh,
he's also a journalist.
Let's give a shout out to Jenny's husband for all the comments.
Thorold, we love you.
But what he pushed you on was wanting you to make sure that educators, workforce leaders, university presidents understood that driving towards agency didn't mean that you were sacrificing academic excellence, right? And as a former educator, as a stepmom, as a godmom, as someone who just deeply cares about our kids and their futures, like that resonates deeply with me. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that conversation with your wonderful husband?
It was a long, 3-year conversation, but yes. So it is a total myth that agency requires sacrificing rigor. Yeah. So we relied a lot on the research of, there are a lot of people doing great research in this field, but John Marshall Reeve does some extraordinary research in this field. He's done 35 randomized controlled trials in 18 countries, as varied as South Korea, very different from Peru, very different from the United States. Yeah. And what he found is that a number of practices that teachers use, and parents can use these too, result in producing agency in students, and that agency results in higher grades, better mental health outcomes, and more pro-social behaviors. And let's be very clear, these are exactly the skills kids are gonna need in the age of AI. This is what we're talking about. So it's the trifecta. They feel better, they learn better, and they are better prepared for a very uncertain world. We keep saying we don't know what kids need. They need to be resilient, adaptable learners. We need to be able to learn well, and that's what this agency is about. And those practices, I don't know, should we talk about the practices?
Let's do it, jump in.
Yeah, they're really kind of 3 main ones. Number 1, acknowledge and validate, right? So kids are frustrated, they're pissed off, they don't like what they're doing. How was school? It was fine. What did you learn? Nothing, How was science? It was boring. You get all these answers. And instead of saying, hey, buck up, you got to do this. This is just the way it is. We're remarkably resigned to the fact that school seems very, very boring to kids. Instead of that, we can say, sometimes I'd rather not go to work. I'd like to spend time with my friends too. Explanatory rationale. But just like you get better at playing soccer by being on that field and practicing and getting better at soccer, going to school is helping your brain get smarter. You are practicing. Learning is hard, and it should hurt a little bit, and it's going to make you better, and it's going to help you succeed. And the number 3 thing he says is kids need choice, right? Kids feel school is done to them, especially teenagers, right? There's a lot of things that are happening neurobiologically in their brains. They are preparing to separate from us, preparing to go find a tribe, preparing to go find a mate in the world, and to do all those things, they need to make choices. And we wonder why they feel so apathetic in the world because we haven't been giving them choices. So Reeve says in his research that if we acknowledge and validate, if we explain respectfully, and we give choice, kids will start becoming better decision makers. They will develop agency, and they will learn better, feel better, and live better.
I love that.
And just to add one factoid, because I love a stat. adolescents today in the United States are subject to 2 times more rules than incarcerated fellows. Yeah. So it's real.
Yeah. And so, this room is filled with, we have educators, we have philanthropic leaders, we have policymakers, we have investors, entrepreneurs. And I know, Rebecca, you are constantly thinking about the system. And when you think about this mix, right, in this room, what should those leaders really be thinking about in terms of moving towards readying their environments for students who will have more agency or crave more agency?
Well, I think if I had to pick 2 or 3 levers for people to pull, one would be anything you can do to bring knowledge acquisition, which is a lot of what we spend time doing and is important.
Yeah.
And I would say I've spent my career talking about knowledge acquisition isn't enough, content isn't enough, we need to apply it, we need transferable skills, and now with AI, I'm like, oh my God, we need content. Because how on earth are young people going to be able to assess whether what they're being served up with AI is even tethered to the real world? So knowledge acquisition, marry it with knowledge application. That can be small little things like, visited a school recently, 8th grade math, pre-algebra, they learned how to solve for X like we all do, and then they gave the 8th grade class a budget and they had to use the algebra they learned to figure out how many Halloween decorations to buy and negotiate, how the cost of the Snickers bars, this, that, and the other. They were using algebra. Really great way to embed and transfer. Or it could be, things like big picture learning or Iowa Big or a ton of great models out there that are doing knowledge application with paired with knowledge acquisition. So, and I don't think there's one model to do it. The second thing I would say, probably the second thing if I had to just pick 2, would be absolutely do everything you can to help kids find their spark. So we found, and there's great survey research out there on this, that the minute kids start slipping academically, remember that story of Mateo, who was like getting bored, and then he was looking for his own fun. That's when parents and schools take away enriched, interesting activities. You can't be on the football team. You haven't kept your grades up. You can't go do Model UN. You can't X, Y, and Z. And it's the opposite of what those kids need. We found that kids who slip into resistor mode, if you give them more autonomy, more freedom to pursue something they're interested in, they hop really quickly to explore mode, and then eventually it spills over to their academic life.
I love that. And Jenny, I'm going to give you our last 60 seconds. Looking to the folks in this room, they just need one thing so they can actually get into action supporting our students.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to, just because we're at an AI conference. You talked about your dad and struggle, right?
Yes.
To learn is to struggle. We have to struggle. We're talking a lot about tools to make things easier and faster and optimize. Like, learning is hard, and we have to lean into learning is hard. I think that is just a really, really important message. And that is part of getting to explore mode. We can do hard things. And so we should be struggling a little bit. And yes, we want technology to optimize some things, but the actual process of learning. So it shouldn't be invisible, which is what your dad said to you, right? But he was right. Struggle makes you stronger, right? So we got to be celebrating that and showing that, even with all of these great technology tools we have. Kids do not learn at the speed of light. They do not. They learn slowly, and it's hard, and we need to celebrate that.
I love it. Well, Jenny and Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us today. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, thanks, folks. That's it.